Hello, and welcome to Successful Storytelling Summit. I'm your host, Michael Arnold. Today we're sitting down with Cynthia Thurlow. She's a globally recognized expert in nutrition and intermittent fasting. Highly sought after speaker, CEO, and founder of the Everyday Wellness Project. She's been a nurse practitioner for over 20 plus years and is a two-time Tedx speaker. Her first talk, Surviving to Thriving, at Tedx Trinity Bellwoods Women, and her second talk, Intermittent Fasting, Transformational Techniques, at Tedx Greenville, have been viewed over 6 million times combined. And the second one's really where that comes from. She's been featured on ABC, Fox 5, KTLA, CW, and in Medium and Entrepreneur magazine. She's also the host of Everyday Wellness Podcast, which was listed as 20 Best Podcasts that will help you grow in 2020 by Entrepreneur magazine. Let's sit down with Cynthia. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about your topic and yourself.
Well, my second TED Talk was about intermittent fasting, which is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. I've been practicing intermittent fasting for almost 5 years. And as a nurse practitioner and a seasoned clinician, I had started to pivot away from traditional modalities. I was getting very tired of just prescribing medications, and they're no fault of our own. You know, we have given many people in the United States and abroad that the idea that every symptom needs to be fixed by a pill.
Yeah.
And I would argue that there are more important strategies, and there are obviously times and circumstances where you need traditional Western medicine. I'm by no means being dismissive, just making the point that there has to be another perspective. And I started to grow increasingly kind of disenfranchised with just writing scripts. And I worked in a very specific subsect of medicine and cardiology. And so that's a large focus of our practice. Mm-hmm. And so I started to pivot away and felt that the more I was reading, the more I was seeing that nutrition was really absolutely, it all started with food, and we weren't talking enough, and we didn't have the education. And I went to a top research-based institution for undergrad and grad school. Just wasn't a large focus of our training. And so I kind of dove down the rabbit hole of nutrition and really decided I needed to pivot. And so my long explanation for how I kind of landed on intermittent fasting was that it was one of many strategies that I was using with my own patients successfully, and not only with my patients, but with myself. And I wanted a platform to be able to share it with more people. And I'm not to suggest that fasting is new or novel, because it's been around since biblical times, but It is not the standard Western medicine discussion is talking about feeding and fasting and what are you eating. And so I wanted an opportunity to be able to share that topic. And really it's the basics. It's really just skimming the surface, as you know, after doing 2 TED Talks yourself, that you really just get to skim the surface of a topic. And so it's always a little more challenging when you have to be very concise, because it's very easy to speak for 20 minutes, much, much harder to do it for 12 minutes. So it was intermittent fasting, transformational technique. There was nothing fancy about that title. I wanted to keep it really clear. My first TED Talk has more of an ambiguous title, and I learned very quickly that what you really want to do is land a TED Talk title that is clear to whoever is searching or looking for whatever it is that you're an expert on. So I'm trained as a nurse practitioner. I've got a huge focus on nutrition. I live in Washington, D.C. with my family. I'm the mom of all boys, including 2 human children, 2 dogs, and a lizard. So in my house, I'm kind of the queen bee, and they tolerate me jet setting all over the place to talk to people. But what I love to do is talk to people about ways that we can stay healthy, ways that we can, reverse aging, maximize our health and wellness journey, and do it in a way where you have more control. Intermittent fasting is a way that you can help augment your life without having to require a lot of instruction, which is a great thing.
How did you end up on the Tedx stage, not just once, but twice?
In 2018, I decided, I'm an introvert, which always surprises people, but I decided I wanted to create a kind of a big, scary goal. And I thought to myself, to have to get on stage and commit something to memory and be able to execute it would be kind of scary. You know, I do public speaking, but this is very different.
Hmm.
And so in June of 2018, I started the application process. And so it really stemmed from the desire to push myself as an individual. I didn't do a TED Talk for any other reason. It was, you know, push myself intellectually, do something that I would find big and scary. I remember even doing the applications, like doing the videos was overwhelming. I was like, how am I going to commit 12 minutes of a dialogue to in my brain, let alone I'm trying to commit 2 minutes, and it seems like it's a huge task. So that's where that stemmed from. And then obviously, you know, the rest is history.
What was the most challenging part of being on the TEDx stage, or of your TEDx journey?
So the second time around was that I had been in the hospital. So I went on vacation with my husband, he had a business trip in Hawaii. And so I wanted to go with him. So I went and I started writing my second TED. I was making the outline, doing the research. I wanted to have it all ready. I think I even had a call. I think I even had a call with the curators on the day I was admitted to the hospital. So came home from vacation, ended up in the hospital with the worst abdominal pain I'd ever had. Turned out that I was in the hospital for 13 days. I had a ruptured appendix and a slew of complications. And so I actually did my second talk with a ruptured appendix, which is a whole separate discussion. So for me, part of my mental fortitude while I was in the hospital was getting home to my family, but also I still wanted to give my talk. And
Yeah.
so what was most challenging for me was I got out, and the first 2 weeks I was home, I literally did nothing other than sleep. I was like a slug. I would, you know, get up. My mom stayed with us for a month. She'd force me to eat something, and then I'd sleep all day. And, you know, I only had about 2 weeks to prep.
Mm.
And when I say 2 weeks to prep, that's really all I had to commit all that to memory. So what was most challenging to me was intellectually, I felt like I was capable of doing the talk. I was concerned physically that I might, you know, really struggle. And so if I look nervous on that second talk, when I first get on stage, it's because I started to realize, I was like, your mind is the most powerful thing we possess. I was like, my body was completely broken down, but I'll be darned, I'm going to get up there and do this talk, and I'm going to show my kids that if you set your mind to something, you can do anything. Because how many people would have told themselves that they couldn't do that talk? And so I really wanted to be a beacon of like hope and inspiration. And for a lot of people, they just don't acknowledge how important it is for us to, you know, kind of persevere. And even though I'd been so sick, I mean, I almost died, I really wanted to set the tone that your mind is the most powerful thing you possess. You set your mind to something, you can actualize it and do it. And so for me, it was a huge victory in my brain. You know, when I got off that stage, I was like, wow, my brain still works. This is awesome. And so for me, the hardest thing was the motivation wasn't lacking. It was, can I physically get up there, remember everything I need to remember, and be able to execute this talk and do it well? Because as we all know, you know, when you are being filmed and, you know, ultimately, you know, this taped session is going to be shared with, I don't know how many people, you want to ensure that you're really doing your best job. And so I tuned out imposter syndrome. I tuned out all the doubt that I had in my brain. I, you know, had fun with my son the day before, and then just got up there and rocked it.
So we talked about the most challenging part of your TEDx journeys. What was the most exciting part and fun part?
You know, relative to my second, because I'll continue to focus on that one. You know, I love to travel, so that was part of it. But to have my son with me, you know, my older son was in middle school, so a little harder for him to miss school. My
Yeah.
youngest was in fifth grade, and so having him there with me was a really proud parental moment. And he's kind of like you know, he's now 12, but he's really like a little old man in a kid's body. Like he's
Mhm.
interested. He sat and listened to every single speaker and was just soaking it all in. So he loved it. And, you know, being 11 years old, he loved that he had special access and that he got to take photos with me and that people were coming up and talking to us. And so, you know, in his little 11-year-old brain, it was the coolest thing ever, because the entire time we were in South Carolina, everything we did was for him. You know, where we chose to go to eat, we went to the wonderful zoo there, walked around. I mean, it was, you know, it was all about him in many ways. So, you know, he was thrilled. And to me, I think having that time with him was really special. After, you know, being in the hospital, I'd only been out for, when I gave the talk, I'd only been 27 days since I'd been discharged. So for me, it gives you a really newfound appreciation for your family and the people you care about. So that time that I had with my son was really, really special. So I would say that was the biggest joy. But also, I have family that live in South Carolina. And so my wonderful aunt and my cousin came to be there as my cheerleaders too, which was awesome. And so having them there was really, I was also, it was like the twofold of, I got to nail this because I've got family in the audience, but also how cool is it that I have family in the audience? So they were there to be my cheerleaders, which was awesome.
Yeah, that was the thing. My family sat right in front of me, so
Oh, wow.
I kind of watched them to
Hmm.
get started, just to get rid of that nervousness, because
Hmm.
it was comforting seeing them there. So, and
Yeah.
then like you said, the audience laughed at the right time, and that just relaxes you well. Hearing that
Yes.
audience laugh is just like, okay, I
It's
got
that
this.
it's validation. And I think for so many of us, we're so like stressed and we're like in our zone, and we hear that laughter and it's like we can take a deep breath and go, okay, that's good. They laughed in an appropriate moment as opposed to an inappropriate moment. But yeah, it's great audience validation. And the one thing about stadium seating that I will say, because my first TED talk was not stadium seating, you can see everybody. There is no hiding anyone. And so I was consistently scanning my eyes, hoping I wouldn't recognize anyone because I thought that might trip me up. Um, but I think that it's really nice when you can get audience validation. Like people were listening and they looked
Mhm.
interested, and no one yawned, thank God, because there's nothing worse than when you're speaking. I'm now so cognizant if someone's teaching or someone can see me. If I need to yawn, I will put my head down and cover my mouth, because yawning is generally not a reflection of you as the speaker,
Mhm.
but it can be super distracting.
It's just those people not getting that 7 to 8 hours that we need, right?
Or it could just be their brain wanted them to kind of wake up a little bit, and so
Yeah.
they yawn. But yeah, yawning can be contagious.
What's some advice that you would give to someone that wants to give a TEDx talk?
I would get really clear about what your idea worth sharing is, and it doesn't have to be laborious. What do you know a lot about? Like
Mhm.
I had one talk I committed to, and then I was offered. I knew that I was a finalist in Greenville, and so I had to come up with a second topic pretty quickly. And I said to my husband, I was like, "What do I know a lot about?" And he was like, "Oh, that's easy, intermittent fasting." And so for me, it was like that's how easy the decision was. So talk about things you're familiar with. Don't go into a TED talk focusing on things that really aren't important, like how many views am I going to get? Will
Mhm.
it go viral? How do I monetize? I get questions about those three areas all the time. And I try to remind people, I'm like, listen, it is lightning in a bottle. I didn't know that the topic I chose for my second talk turned out to be the number one Googled topic in nutrition and wellness in 2019.
Wow.
That was a huge part of it, but that's not why I chose it. And I think a lot
Mhm.
of people try to make it a numbers game. They want to know, how did you make it go viral? Who did you pay? And I just laugh because that's not how it works. It just, a lot of it's presenting something that you feel comfortable and confident about. And that's really the beauty of a TED talk. It's not how many views you get. It's not how you monetize. It's finding a topic that you're passionate about and that you want to share with the world, and share it in a unique way. Because there are a lot of people, like, let's be honest, my first talk was on perimenopause, which is like not a sexy topic at all, like at all. And everything I looked at on TED before I did my talk was about menopause. And a lot of it, some of it was funny and some of it was very serious. And so trying to strike a tone between having something that makes people laugh and then having something that's informational, and sharing, if it's appropriate, your own personal journey, I think is really helpful. So I think focus on things that you know a lot about, find a cohesive thread that perhaps is a unique perspective, because Ted's not going to let you give a talk about a topic someone's talked about 15 other times.
Mhm.
They want something fresh and unique. So really thinking about what you're an expert on, what's worth sharing, and how to do it in a cohesive, new, fresh way that will entice, people to want to look for it or listen to it.
What was some advice that you received that after you were on the stage, you realized that was really bad advice?
Well, I don't think I got a lot. Well, I shouldn't. I guess what I would say is my first talk. The person that ran that talk was very triggered by my topic, And so I started to doubt what I was going to speak about. And after I got off the stage, because it went so well, because in my mind, when I did that first talk, I wanted to be the best I could possibly be at that talk. I was like, I want to get off that stage, feel confident, and know that I did the best I've ever done, like exceed my expectations. And it turned out that that ended up being a really great talk. And I realized after the fact that the individual that was so triggered by the topic in and of itself was human. And so I'm glad that I stuck with my topic choice, and I was glad that I delivered it the way that I wanted to, because ultimately it ended up being a very successful talk. And so the bad advice that I got was to change my topic. And I'm glad that I stuck with the topic that I had chosen, because I do believe that there are women out there, and men for that matter, that needed that information. And that's based on now the validation that I've gotten from many, many people across social media, that kind of feedback. So, the other thing is sometimes people that you love in your life have limiting beliefs, and they try to impress them upon you. Maybe they're fearful about you getting on stage,
Yeah.
and they say things to sound discouraging, and you have to tune that out. I mean, thankfully I didn't have that personally, but I've heard of other peers and colleagues having that experience. Everyone in my life was very supportive, but I think it's really critical to silence people around you. If you're not team Cynthia or team Michael, then you just tune them out, because doing a TED Talk is an awesome experience. And those are probably the two areas I would say I would discourage people from worrying too much about. It's very easy to get overcome with the noise that goes on around us. And so, I had a whole like mental prep that I did the night before, getting into my zone, how I was going to eat, how I was going to sleep, which, by the way, unintentionally was not very much, because it was so on my mind. Like, I got to get on that stage. I got to nail it. You don't get a second shot. You either nail it or you don't.
Yep.
And so I was putting a lot of pressure on myself, but there are a lot of ways to work around the things that go on around you before you get up there, for sure.
Yeah. What is your next TEDx talk going to be about?
I actually turned down a third one. If you can believe this, at the time that my second talk came out and started going viral, I had been, the opportunity to do a TED Med came up, which is an incredible honor. And I just decided after doing 2 TED Talks that I was done, largely because I really want to continue speaking and, being able to reach lots of people, but I'm not sure I would go down that path again. Now, having said that, someone asked me the other day, would you ever do one if the opportunity arose? And I never say never, but I'm not sure, just because I'm now doing a lot of speaking. Well, take COVID out of it, I had a lot on my speaking calendar for the year. But having said that, I think that, opportunities, if they come up, I would certainly consider it. But at this point now, I'm looking in different directions, and I've done quite a bit of travel between then and before pre-COVID social distancing. So it's really been a cool opportunity to kind of expand my ability to speak on different platforms and different venues, and organize with different companies, organizations, etc., and be able to continue to spread good information that will be helpful. As I would say, educate, inspire, and empower people to live their best lives.
How can people reach out and connect with you and learn more about menopause, intermittent fasting, all the other cool stuff that you talk about?
Yeah. So my website's probably a great first step, www.cynthiathurlow.com. I've got access to my podcast, Everyday Wellness, which is really incredible. We've got a lot of, the leading health and wellness experts that I've had the pure privilege of connecting with. I'm on Facebook. I have a free Facebook group called Intermittent Fasting Lifestyle / my name. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm kind of all over. And I just started a YouTube channel, which I'm slowly growing. If I could ever get my highlights done again, I'll be back on video to be doing videos for my YouTube channel. So I'm everywhere, but I would say the easiest place to start is my website by far.
Well, I appreciate your time. It was great conversation talking with you today. I've learned some things because, like I said, my wife's a pescatarian, and I've actually ate paleo for a while, and I actually did the whole 30 for a month.
Awesome.
I've got medical conditions I'm trying to figure out.
Hmm.
And as a problem solver, I'm trying to solve those instead of just taking medicine. And
Smart.
so that's what I'm trying to do as well. So I appreciate not just talking to you, but learning from you as well.
Yeah, no, it's such a pleasure to connect with you again.
Well, thank you again for your time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds great.